And there we go, not perfect, but it's a good 180. And this video is all about 180. So in getting a 180, I know I've done a video on it before, how to get one, stuff like that, but the further and further I've gone into the 10,000 hour experiment, the more and more practice I realise it's actually all about how you practice your technique is the key thing when you're trying to hit a 180. There's a lot of tips that I've done in a previous video that really will help with this, but what I've realised from doing hours and hours and hours of practice and then going and playing is no matter how good you play, you can go in and out of hitting 180s, and that all depends on how much feel you have as you're coming through the shot. And what I mean by that is once you're coming through the shot and you're standing nice solid base, you're standing nice and still, as you're coming through, the point of where you release has to be a very similar point every time, but it's not going to be the same point. What you often find, right, is that when you're coming through, say you're hitting the first one, depending on how your darts will sit up in the board, either if they're like that, mine are like sort of this, what I will do is sometimes I will try to feel that they're coming through a little bit harder in order just to raise up so they're clattering into it and going down. If you're someone whose dart sits like this, again, you want to feel actually slightly softer so that you're going to come in and just land on top almost and land over the top. If you're like this, you definitely want to be a bit softer, like Phil Taylor's, they'll go in there and stick right in the top. But what I focus on more than anything else is I look to try and find the perfect grouping, which in an all honest world for a lot of people is like that. You see a lot of it on TV sometimes. You know, I'll zoom in on that so you can see. That's a good idea. Don't ever buy one of these boards because they're terrible. This is actually of about 20 minutes of throwing. But an idea of a perfect grouping is like that, so that you've got a nice spread angle, but also you've got, you know, a decent room for error. So that if you're right on the edge of the wire, you haven't got to move over and try and be throwing, you know, over the cross so you can go up or down or whatever it may be. So try and get the feel right. So when I talk about feel, things that really help that are certain drills. Now, one of the drills that I've really found that particularly helps in trying to hone that skill is actually when you're going around the board, not just on doubles, but when you're trying to throw, say, single one, single two, single three, single four, and etc, etc. When you're doing that, for some reason, it helps you just, when you're trying to hit the center every time, it helps you focus on the feel, because you're building pressure as you go, like, you know, just try and do them without missing. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 20 if you can. I know I've said about this other drills, but this one really helps. It's funny, after you do it, all of a sudden, if you've not been hitting the treble for a while, if you get quite a way on that, you'll start getting closer and closer, because it just helps you focus in, because every single shot, you're putting pressure on, you're getting used to that. So back to feel. So feel, what I mean by that is, it's really important that you don't over practice as well. You know, what I've realised is sometimes if you are going up to a tournament and you've practiced really heavy the days leading up to it, and then you're warming up heavily at a tournament, or you're even just playing an online match, if you have practiced low as the day before, what you often find is that when you're throwing, say, the second, third dart, you'll start dropping. So what you have to do, you have to look and pay attention to how your darts are going in, you know, because what you don't want to see is as you're going in the board, you know, one goes in nicely, and then all of a sudden you see this, bang, you know, and then you'll overcorrect and go above. You see it so many times, you know, with people overcorrecting because they're just lacking that little bit of feel, you know, that little bit of just trying to feel every time that they're feeling like they're releasing at the same point. And it feels quite late in the throw and the release, but just try and pay attention to it, because you might be a bit earlier on in your game and playing darts. So just try and pay attention, and when you're throwing, just try to feel the release. Try to feel exactly what point. And another really big thing, what I personally think the key is trying to hit a 180, is trying different techniques. You know, there's plenty of times I've stood there and I'll be, you know, this way, try this way, try this way, try back, you know, try lots of different things, and you'll get a feel for something that works in your throw. Me, myself personally, I stand just to the slightly left-hand side of the hockey, not right over to the left. I've tried all different places, you know, and I personally find for me, you know, having a nice smooth back takeaway and through, but slowing down at the back, so I've got a nice smooth thing. I know when I'm throwing badly, I have a little tendency to come out a little bit, you know. So little things, you've got to pay attention to them to actually get the 180. You know, you're not just gonna start throwing 180s for no reason. You know, there was a period where I was throwing, you know, 3 180s every match, and then all of a sudden, after playing for a while and stopped practicing on my own, I started to hit a lot of good scores, but hit less 180s, which, you know, if you can hit them, you're going to be laughing, because it's going to give you that head start on everything else, you know, and it means you can get close and adjust by a little amount. So they're really a technique within themselves, but you've got to practice on hitting them. There's no point in you just throwing a treble 20, just mindlessly going at them. You have to try and focus on pulling the group in. That's why you see some people focusing on trying to get 3 ball size, which is another good drill, you know, because if you get 3 in there, you can get 3 in there, no problem, you know, because you have to pull in, you know, your group in every time. But my personal favourite drill to try and get this better is trying to get 3 in this bed, you know, 3 in this bed, 3 in here, you know, 3 in here sometimes, even if you're a bit wayward, 3 in here, which also helps your doubles. But it's about getting the feel as you're coming through the dart frame, you know, and to give you an idea how my game is now, you know, it takes a little while to warm up, so don't expect to start hitting straight away. And the other key thing is mindset. You know, when you're going to try and hit a 180, you're trying to hit your best shots you can. Don't try and think about 180. Try to think about, not about the result of the game, just try to think feel. You know, get the right feel point. Just get the right flow. You know, just let it go. I think a lot of people sometimes, including myself, when I'm not throwing well, tend to think about the technique too much. So I won't think, just focus on that little bit of feel and just release that dart nicely. That's when the feel comes. If you're focusing too much on, oh, that might not go in, oh, I don't want to throw it too hard, that's what's going to ruin your game, you know. So I'm going to travel another little couple of throws now, just so you can see. I'm not going to hit 180, but it's just so you can see the difference in how my throws personally developed over a long-term amount of practice. And I've practiced in the last, you know, week or so, and I'm leading up to Q School, just to focus on just pulling in them darts, just getting that little bit closer. So we'll see how we can do with a couple of throws here. I'm not expecting much, but we'll see what we can do. And yeah, don't ever buy one of these boards, because they don't last long. So you see there, so the first ones, I've gone over adjusted, and then I've gone under. So we'll see if we can just put it in a little bit tighter, even if we can get it a little bit harder. And drop in the pace. There you go. So as it's coming through, that little bit more pace. So just always adapting to what you can see, you know, which helps you focus. Yeah, so again, they're coming in at an angle, so we just need to straighten up a little bit here. Again, board's not helping me out really, but let's try and get one more 140. Yeah. There you go, nice and straight to finish. So we should be good to get on over that now. There we go. Ooh. There you go. So 140 to finish. So you can just, obviously I'm not here 180, but it's all about the feel, and it doesn't really matter. You can hit 41s, hit 45s. It doesn't really matter. It's all about, you know, hitting the right focus. I mean, in an ideal world, I like them a little bit straighter for me. You know, just from, I've got the camera obviously there, but the key thing is the feel of it. You know, it's all about just feeling the adjustment. You know, looking at your darts. How are they sitting in the board? If they're like that and they're not gonna, you're not sitting in right, you need to adjust. So just feel and look at your throw. It's all about feedback from the board. So if you're throwing a certain way and you feel like you want to change it a little bit, you know, you can even try changing your stems, try changing your flights so they sit a little bit differently. If you're getting loads of bounce outs, you probably shouldn't be. It's just about something, just needs to change slightly, but the best way to change it is in your release, so you can keep repeating that throw. I hope that helps. Again, you know, not the best darts from what I'm throwing there, but it's all about, it's hard to do it with the camera, because when you're focusing on trying to get a result, it's obviously builds pressure, and you're focusing on just getting a dart in. But it's good for, same as match practice. Sometimes you've got to do it when you need to, you know, which I'm glad there wasn't in the 26s. So, you know, it's all good, but practice on your own sometimes. You know, make sure you're trying to just work on them techniques, because if you don't work on trying to hit a 180 properly, and you're just throwing, sometimes it's going to go away from you. You know, little habits are going to creep in that you didn't necessarily want. That's what happened to me. You know, I was throwing a lot, but then I wasn't looking back at my technique, what was happening. Little movements, little head bobs, you know, little just left and rights. You see it all the time. So I hope that helps, and I'll catch you all soon.